Tomorrow is cut day in the NFL. So I wanted to get on and just talk a little bit about who I think is going to make the roster and who might not. In the past, they've done several tiers of cutting players. You have to do this many by this time, this many by this time. But this year, the NFL is doing one large cut. And they're cutting from 90-something down to the 53-man roster. So there's going to be a lot of guys tomorrow around the NFL that are being released and hopefully eventually moved on to practice squads somewhere or to other people's teams. So the first thing the Bills have to do is decide what to do on Von Miller. And I'm sure they're meeting with him about that. They've got to decide what his status is going to be. If he's ready to play, then the Bills may activate him. So there's a simple decision to be made here. Does he play week 1, or do we sit him out for 4 weeks? If you put him on the injured reserve list, he's got to go out for at least 4 weeks. So, and he can't practice with the team during those 4 weeks, but I'm not concerned about Von Miller's practice abilities because I know that he will be ready if called upon. So I think I'm leaning towards Von should sit out. I want him to be 110% before we bring him back. And with everybody else on the defensive line healthy, I think Von should sit out the 4 weeks. And that's going to make a big decision because this roster, as I'm going to get into, is going to be hard to cut at the end. So one player, it's going to make a big difference too. So we'll start out with the quarterbacks. Barkley's hurt. So I think we're going to go with the law firm of Allen & Allen and see how that works out. And the wide receivers, we got, and I'm not naming these in any order. I'm just listing them off. We've got Diggs, Davis, Sherfield, Hardy. I think Shakir, Isabella, and Shorter all make the team. So that's 7 wide receivers. I know the debate is 6 or 7, and I think you're going 7. Just because they've got some good talent out there at the wide receiver position. And down to offensive line, I think we're going to go 9 offensive linemen. And again, these are hard decisions to make because usually you want to carry 10 offensive linemen. But here I'm going to go 9 just because I want that extra receiver. So we've got Dawkins, Torrance, Morris, McGovern, and Brown as the 5 starters. And then Bates and Vandermark. Vandermark is the one player I think has impressed me the most through training camp because before training camp started, I didn't really know who he was. And he's a really solid tackle when he gets into the game at left tackle. So definitely want him on the roster in case something happens to Deion Dawkins. Edwards, he started at left guard at the last game. So we pretty much have to have him on the team. And then I'm going to go with Alec Anderson out there as well. I think Alec has proved himself. He can play tackle, and now he's also showing he can play some center too. I guess if the ultimate goes down that Morris and Bates are both hurt, we've got Alec Anderson ready to go. So on to running backs, I have 3 running backs, Cook, Murray, and Harris. I love Evans. Mims has got a concussion right now, so he won't be on the roster. But, I mean, I don't want to lose Evans, but hopefully he'll make the practice squad. I do have a fullback, so I might have confused you right there. You might have thought I was going to put him in as running back. But Gilliam is our fullback and / tight end. We got 3 tight ends with Gilliam being the 4th in case something happens on injury. That's Knox, Kincaid, and Morris. And Quentin Morris had a nice touchdown. He's a very good tight end. I think we've got a great tight end room. We've got the rookie coming on. We've got Knox. I mean, 3 awesome tight ends, 3.5 with, if you count Gilliam. So that'll move us on to defense. So on the defensive side of the ball, I've got Leonard Floyd, 5 defensive ends. Leonard Floyd, Greg Rousseau, Epinesa, Lawson, and Boogie Basham. 5 defensive tackles. Jones, Settle, Ford, Oliver, and Phillips. Moving on to linebacker. I went with 5 linebackers, and I'll explain why. You got Matt Milano, Williams, Dodson, Klein, and Bernard. I'm hoping Bernard's back. I'm not quite sure on his status with his hamstring, if he's back ready to play, but if he's back, then yes. Balen Spector, speaking of hamstrings, he did pull his, so I'm going to put him on that before mentioned injured reserve list and put him out for 4 weeks because I don't know the status of his hamstring, but those usually take a few weeks to heal. So we go on to cornerback. We've got White, Jackson, Benford, Elam, Johnson, and Siran Neal. Siran Neal, my wife's nephew. Yeah. So I love the way Siran's been playing, so I definitely want him in there. On to safeties. I've got Hyde, Poyer, Rapp, and Hamlin. And then I didn't know whether to list him as a safety or as a corner, but I did put Cam Lewis onto the final roster as my 53rd player on here. So, and then, of course, the 3 special teamers with Bass, Martin, and Ferguson. And there's been talk of maybe Ferguson or Allen or someone like that might be cut and then just re-sign the next day. So don't worry too much if that happens with those guys. They're just playing around with the roster to try to get as many guys on here as possible because I'm about to list 7 guys that I can't believe the Buffalo Bills are going to be able to cut because I think these 7 should be playing in the NFL. Tyler Matakevich, he is a special teams monster. And it's going to cost the Bills a $2.5 million roster hit to cut this guy. But he's probably my first guy cut because I want him on the team, but there's just no place left on the roster. And if he's not going to give us much on linebacker, I think now with the talk of playing Taylor Rapp and Siran Neal even out there as even another linebacker instead of having 2, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen much of that, but that's just talk around fans. And if that happens, then we're going with 5 linebackers. So we'll see. Obviously, I might not be right on any of this, and I'll make a video after the final roster decision by the Bills and try to see why they made a decision one way or the other. So Kingsley Jonathan is another big cut that I don't want to see made. Last year, they did cut him at the end, and the Chicago Bears said, thank you very much, and picked him right up. And then later, we were able to bring him back. I hope this year we can just bring him back because he is definitely a defensive end that we want on the team, a defensive lineman we want on the team. And, man, I wish we could keep these guys. But, this is just showing how good of a roster the Buffalo Bills have, that we're losing guys like Tyler Matakevich or Kingsley Jonathan. Again, another player who's really improved, Jamarcus Ingram. Corner is just a hard place to cut somebody because it's so hard in the past for us to really have a quality corner. And Jamarcus is playing so good right now. I'd hate to lose him. Marcel Aitman is the wide receiver I don't want to lose. I know a lot of people may have Shavers or someone else up there on the wide receiver list, but I really like Aitman and his size that he brings to the team. Cameron Klein has had a fantastic training camp and has moved from a player I didn't really know much about to someone I've been really impressed with, and hopefully he makes our practice squad. Same thing for Richard Courage. He was signed as an undrafted free agent from Florida, and I didn't think he had a chance at making the roster. Now I'm saying he's a guy that I hope he doesn't get cut, and he will be the 10th lineman, I would think, if we have a 10th lineman, but roster cuts are hard to make. They're hard to make. I pity the coaches that are making these. And then Elianku, last year he was on our practice squad and got called up several times during the year. But so did another Buffalo Bill who's no longer with us. So, I hope Ellie can make the team, but It may be one of those things where he's moving up and down. I don't know how many of these guys are going to get sniped. The New York Giants love sniping our players. They know a lot about Jamarcus Ingram. They obviously know Medikevich and Jonathan. So we'll see what's going to happen there. Other teams are going to know that there's quality players out there too. And the Bills may be looking for somebody. Well, they're going to be looking because there's one thing I do know. Brandon Beane does not stop turning over rocks. And he is going to look at each and every team, each and every player cut. They said that they're going to meet with each and every player the Bills decide to release and hopefully try to encourage to come back to the practice squad. And that's the kind of way they roll. I think that that'll be really appreciated. And I really know that they're going to be looking at other teams' rosters. They're going to look at everybody that's cut, each and every player that's cut from every other team, and decide if that's somebody that they need to try to bring in to the Bills. So tomorrow will be interesting to see who is released around the league. I know there will be some surprises on different teams, and maybe there'll be a new Buffalo Bill. Maybe I'm completely wrong on who's getting released because I like all of the 7 guys I listed. I like a couple of guys I didn't even list. I like every single player that puts on a Bills uniform. They become part of the mafia, which means family to me. So I hate to see any of them go, but that's the name of the game. That's the way it is, because you go from 90 to 50, somebody got to leave. A lot of somebodies that are really good football players have to go on. So, especially when you have a deep and good roster like the Bills currently have. So, with that, remember that you're on my roster if you're watching this. And where you and I are gathered, 2 are gathered, at least, God is there. And if you want to look around and ever need anybody to support you, remember, you are on my roster and you're on God's roster. So just raise your hand and let me know. Please make comments down in the comments section here to let me know what you think about the decisions that I made if I was the general manager of the Buffalo Bills. And let me know what you think, or if any changes you might have made. And always remember to like and subscribe. But more importantly, that God loves you! And so do I!